So the idea of the 12 officials comes from this book called Wang Di Ne Jing, The Yellow Emperor's Internal Classic, which is supposed to be 5,000 years old and based upon the conversations between the Yellow Emperor, which is a legendary figure in China, and various wise men that he has in his cabinet. It actually was put together from older sources, probably in the second or third century, and contains different things, obviously coming from different sources. But there's this one chapter in it, in which the Yellow Emperor asks his advisor Qi Bo about the 12 officials. And what's presented then is an analogy between the officers in an imperial court and the organs of the human body. And I've found it from the very beginning to be really fascinating, because in my life experience, working with various different kinds of groups in different situations, always there seemed to be a certain pattern in how power was divided out, shared, and worked together among people, and it really always seemed to be analogous to different parts of the body. And then when I discovered this particular passage, there were 12 defined functions within the abdomen of the different organs of the body, which corresponded to a particular function in a organization. And while many of the titles and languages are obscure and people debate over what they mean, some of the different officials that are described and defined are very, very clear in terms of who they are and what they're supposed to do within an organization. And the fact that it is analogous to the organs of the body is something that it's fascinating to me in terms of how the universe is organized. If indeed there is an organizing principle within life forms, whereas certain functions have to be carried out, and there's a division of labor between different parts of a body, as there is between a group of people trying to do a particular enterprise. So I'm going to go through these just briefly to give kind of a clear definition of what each one is or does relative to my experience. And they're somewhat different than how people ordinarily think of governments, but I think corresponds in a way that can be very useful as a way to see how life organically operates. So first is the heart, and the heart is defined as the Lord who rules, the Lord who has sovereignty. And its function is said to be the radiation of consciousness. And this is an idea that goes back in Chinese history of a very long time and is imitated more than it actually comes into being. But it comes from the idea that the spirit, the head, the part that really has power in a situation only functions to radiate out the power of light, the power of clarity, so that the other people in the enterprise see things clearly and see what they need to do, and that he, the sovereign, never actually does anything. This is the whole Taoist concept of wu wei, not doing, and it is really important that there be someone who can radiate light and at the same time not actively manage things. In our contemporary experience of life, that the idea is almost universal, that power is needed, that people need a Lord, that people need some source of light that isn't ordinarily available, but that once was, and that the Lord has since left the building, has gone on into another world, still provides the light and the power for the enterprise, but no longer is physically present. You see this very much in the whole idea of Christianity, where Jesus will return to rule, but in the meantime, it's the Holy Spirit that working through other people that actually gets things done. It's much easier to be loyal to and to worship someone who you can't really see working as a human being. The power that the sovereign Lord has, though, is to appoint, is to designate, is to give a mandate to a prime minister, someone who actually does the governing. In the physical body, in this paradigm, the official that's just under the heart, just under the Lord, is the prime minister, the lung, who controls the chi, controls the air, controls the force that you breathe in and use to actually move, and designates who does what in time. So basically, the prime minister is like the CEO. He only has power that is given to him by a board or a lord or a tradition, but he actually is the ruler and makes the decision about who's hired, who's fired, where people work, and what resources they get. He's the boss. Under him is the liver, which in this paradigm is called the general. So every manager has to have someone who has his back, who he is able to run ideas off of in the first place, and who will actually implement them into the world, who will work out the budget, who will strategically plan how to move, and will make sure all the other officials under him are doing their function. Under him is the gallbladder, and the gallbladder in this paradigm represents the champion, that person who will stand up and fight for the enterprise against hostile external. He is the first yang official. All the previous officials are yin. They're solid parts of the solid organs that are vital to the body. But the gallbladder, you can take out the gallbladder and survive. It's the first yang official, and it's really the one who tells people on the lower levels what to do. And as in a lot of the dramas, such as the Iliad or David, you have two armies clashing, you have two peoples clashing together, and if you have a full-out fight, most or huge numbers of both armies will be destroyed. But if each side selects one person to champion the cause, there can be a great savings of blood and treasure. So in any organization, you have to have someone who will stand up for the structure as it is, and insist upon cooperation of everybody else with the general, the prime minister, and the sovereign lord. Now, below the champion is the envoy, and this also is a yin official, and is like in the ancient world. Oftentimes, the way good relations were established between different peoples was that the king or the lord would give his daughter, one of his younger daughters, in marriage to the prince of a neighboring kingdom. She would be sent when she was about 14 to essentially grow up in this other world and be bicultural, so that even she has a loyalty to her parents who raised her and who taught her her first language, and a loyalty to the kingdom that she has been married into, so that she can be an envoy between the two people. Oftentimes you will see this in terms of the in a corporate situation, someone at the front desk who is kind, sweet, attractive, and welcoming, presents the best face of the organization to the outside world. So you have the champion, which will defend the organization, and then the envoy, which will reach out and establish a heart connection with the outside world. Those are the first 5 officials, and then the next layer is the earth layer, the stomach and the spleen, and they really are about food, ordinary physical sustenance. You can't have a working organization if you don't have meals, if you don't have decent sustenance. And while that particular function is the most overlooked oftentimes, or unrecognized, or unrewarded, it sits right in the middle of the hierarchy, and everything depends on it, even though it's oftentimes a less honored or less visible function. In my experience, if you have a group of people pursuing an enterprise that has bad food for 3 days, then the enterprise will start to fall apart. You must have decent food, and you must have some way for the people in the organization to get that food, to get nourishment. And so there's this dual function, both of the cook and the servant. That function of preparing food and that function of getting the food to the people. And that works both in terms of actual food in an enterprise, but also in terms of someone who holds the center and who is able to establish communications and the feeling of being held and nurtured among the whole group. Just below the earth officials, the stomach and the spleen, you have the large intestine. Now, the large intestine, of course, is the most hidden and least attractive of all the officials, all the functions within a group. But the fact is, you have to have a way to get shit handled in any kind of an enterprise, in any kind of a group. You have to have someone who takes out the trash. You have to have someone who everybody sees as kind of an asshole, who people don't like, and who they project all their negative view of themselves onto, or other people, but who, to have someone like that who will take on that function within any group is absolutely essential. And something that has to be studied, noticed, and worked with in a way that is compassionate, but realistic. It is the oddest thing that within any small group where people work together and know each other, for some reason people start to dislike one person and feel that they are a toxic element that somehow must be pushed out. This is a very bizarre phenomenon, but it's universal in terms of how people get anything done, and something that has to be understood and worked with. He is the young counterpart of the prime minister, and oftentimes will try to take power. If the asshole takes power, then you have an autocracy and a system that is toxic and will fall apart. So that division has to be clear between the prime minister and the large intestine. In a classic imperial court, you would say that the large intestine is the executioner, and that which gets executed is the toxicity within the system. So they kind of go together as a pair. And the executioner is blindfolded and anonymous. He is the part of the body where the sun don't shine. But is absolutely essential for making the thing work. And the prime minister will give the order to fire someone, to get rid of them, but the large intestine is the one that tells them and escorts them out of the building. Then it's interesting that the large intestine is above the small intestine, has in the hierarchy more power than the small intestine, but the small intestine is that which is the young extension, the more active extension of the heart of the sovereign Lord. But because it's young as opposed to the yin, is actually active, but active in a way that's oftentimes not noticed or recognized at first, because the small intestine is responsible for producing laughs, for changing the atmosphere, for lightening and making things fun and interesting and funny, and for being able to ridicule and make fun of the prime minister. Someone needs to be the guy who makes the wisecrack at the right time, that brings the hierarchy down a peg and balances out the energy of the group so people feel together and that it's fun. So you always need a smartass. You always need someone who brings humor and brings paradox and brings to light the emperor's invisible clothes. Underneath the small intestine, the jester, the fool, the comedian, you have the kidney. Now the kidney is the lowest of the yin organs, the most vital organs, the organs that you can't live without in the body, and the one that's least obvious but is absolutely essential to the functioning of the organism. The kidney is that part of the body that stores and makes things work physically. In a organization like a corporation, the kidney is the operations manager. The kidney is the technical expert. The kidney is the one who holds on and keeps track of the money, and is able to repair or fix or understand how the technical part of things work. So he's down closer to the ordinary people and is much more aware of the actual technical physical functioning of things and make sure that that all works. Below him is an official that in this text is called the triple warmer. Now, this doesn't refer, well, some say it does, some say it doesn't, but it doesn't refer to an organ the way we think of organs ordinarily within the abdomen. It doesn't have a counterpart in terms of the heart or a lung or a kidney. It's basically thought to be the fascia that holds the whole thing together and divides the abdomen into three parts and balances and controls the temperature and the climate between the three different levels. In my understanding of how this corresponds to a practical function within a group of people is that you need a priest. You need someone who can move between all the different officials and connect them all. The number 3 in Chinese cosmology always has to do with heaven, earth, and man. Man is the creature that connects heaven and earth. So the priest has to be able to connect to the higher world, to heaven, back to the heart. It is the yang fire ministerial official, and so can connect all the way back up to the heart, the sovereign, and at the same time it connects with the lower level. It is the official next to the lowest official and can see and relate and feel the difficulties and the problems and the situation of the people and balance those forces between the higher and the lower so that people feel connected with the higher purpose of the function and with the reason that the whole thing is happening. And then the lowest official, the last official, is the bladder. And the bladder is said to be like a provincial governor. In other words, you have the capital where you have the sovereign and all the main officials. You have the general that oversees how the whole operation defends itself. You have the champion that makes sure that everybody is loyal to the hierarchy. But you have to have someone who actually is down on the ground and collects the taxes and distributes the goods to the people and controls how the actual ordinary people operate. So basically, that would be the crew manager. You know, if you're actually trying to get something done when you're out in the field and you're actually working, the person who keeps on top of everybody to make everybody work effectively and efficiently together, like a sergeant in the military, who basically keeps the ordinary people functioning, moving, productive, and fed, but also extracts what is needed by the whole organization from them. So that's a basic brief description of the 12 different officials in a organization of any kind, as well as in an organism of any kind. You must have to have all of those 12 functions working in order for an organism to actively function. And drama, and what's interesting about life, can always be seen in which of those officials is inharmoniously not doing its job, missing, or has a conflict with one of the others. That makes for all the drama in life. And what is most useful oftentimes in this paradigm is to be able to look at an organization, to look at a group of people who are trying to get something done, and see which official is out of balance, not functioning, or in conflict.